Stephen Bidday, as he was speaking to the NRM Electoral Commission chairperson, Mr. Tanga Odoy, giving us an update on the NRM nominations. But at this point in time, we'd like to acquaint you with new information that will allow you stretch your shilling during this time of COVID-19. Many people have been grappling for nearly 5 months. Many have been struggling to make do with the bare minimum as the COVID-19 pandemic imposed a lockdown on many. Indeed, many are locked in a situation where they have little or nothing saved over from March. Imagine if you last got your food on April 4th. Do you still have it right now? Imagine if you lost your job in May. How have you been making ends meet during this coronavirus pandemic? I do have Ronald Mukasa-Kubuge. He's a financial literacy coach. He's going to be helping you get acquainted with that information that is imperative to help you stay afloat economically during these very, very trying times. Mr. Mukasa, very good morning and many thanks for joining us on Morning at NTV.
Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. And this comes at a time when many, many people are grappling. And I'm going to ask you a very hard question. How do I stretch a shilling that I do not have?
Well, I think the last 5 months have stretched any average family in this country, and
Indeed.
all over the world. And I think all of us are looking for alternatives. How do we get out of this challenging time? I think any family at this point has to look carefully at two things.
All right.
One is their expenses, which you can't do without. If you are renting a home, possibly that's a fixed expense that you have to incur. You have to feed your family.
Yes.
So there are kind of expenses which are there. I mean, you could choose not to buy a shirt and a dress, but you have to eat food. So usually you are putting your eyes on what things which you think are inevitable you have to pay for. But also you have to look at the income. And I think most of us at this point, now that the economy is starting to be opened up, one of the things which is key is to ensure that we are looking for ways of how we can boost our income. I think most of us, I mean, if you mentioned someone who has lost their job. If you lost your job during this period, you may be able to earn money in the future, but not in the way you used to earn it. So you may not get a salary, for example. So you need to ask yourself, if I can't get a salary which is monthly, is it possible for me to get a daily income? What can I be able to do to earn a daily income? And that could mean looking through your skill set and asking yourself, what is it that I can do within my home to be able to earn 20,000 a day? It's not as much as what you used to earn, but it's better than nothing. So that is where, that's kind of the mindset we need to take on, that we need to kind of build our income a bit to be able to take care at least of the basic expenses that we have.
Now, address the people who have lost their jobs. How do they stretch the shilling? How do they recover? Because it seems like the main strategy is moving on. If you've lost the job, many people are trying to hang on, maybe thinking maybe the managers will call me back, and time is running out. Help me address such people.
Yeah,
are they sitting on a time bomb?
Yeah, I think when COVID started, we all hoped it would be a short thing that we can let go of. Now people are telling us it could take us 2 years, it could take 3 years. It's certainly going to take a long period of time. So I think anyone who possibly lost their work,
Yes.
you have to deal with the possibility that that job may not come back. And if it's not coming back, you need to ask yourself, what can I do as an alternative? Usually the quickest place to look is a skill which you have, which you possibly haven't used for a while, that you can be able, I mean, some people are possibly good cooks and they can bake or do something like that. And you say, even where I am at home, can I be able to bake some cakes, and can I be able to put them on social media and be able to sell them? And that may not be as good as the corporate job which you had, but it is certainly better than nothing. So where we are now, we need to ask ourselves, how can I be able to make small baby steps tomorrow? And usually it is skills, usually it is things which you're possibly passionate about, usually it is things which you can possibly do with your hands. That is where you actually start. And another place which you can look is your networks. You may find that your previous workplace, it cannot give you your job back, but can give you a small contract to do something small. I mean, possibly you're working with a media house, and they're not going to retain you as an anchor, for example. But they can allow you to be a freelance journalist. So you might want to use these networks to say, the networks which already existed even before this period, how can I go out there and ask, you know what, I can be able to do this assignment for you. Can I earn 50,000 from it? That should be the attitude you take as we walk into this next period.
So attitude is going to be to play a very, very big role. If you've lost your job, please move on. Do not wait. And look inside yourself. Reflect on other skills that you have. The smaller skills. Can you bake mandazi? Can you fry chapatis? Like what we've been seeing with the private teachers before the president came up to bankroll them with 22 billion Uganda shillings. But let's talk about the time to look for a loan to bankroll your capital and business. Is this the right time?
I think every business owner has to be careful how much credit they get into. Certainly also the financial institutions may not have as much appetite to lend because of the times we're in. But I think a business owner should focus on finding a customer, or at least finding that business they used to have. So if you used to supply stationery to organizations, if you can go to that organization and gives you a contract to supply stationery of 5 million, then go to the financial institutions and borrow against that. That is a bit, because it's clearer, because the tough thing which we have is that even with capital, we don't know whether customers are returning. You could have your premises stocked up, but customers don't come to buy.
Because they're in the same position you're in.
The same position you're in. So you need to ask yourself, how do I get some business before I take credit? And also the other risk is many times credit in this period, because we are all having a squeeze on our consumption. Sometimes you take credit and actually you use that money to be able to cover household expenses. So that means that you have taken credit which you thought was for business, but you have used for consumption purposes. So you need to be very careful which kind of credit you're taking on and what purpose you're using it for.
Okay, talk to us about such people that are now riddled with debts. How can they get out of that situation?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to be able to take an inventory of your debt position, to know clearly how deep a hole are you in. The bank loan, with your landlord, with friends, with family, how big is that debt? When you have established that figure and you have that number, the next thing which you need to do is to take a position of saying what is possible for me to pay within the next 6 months. And here you're just projecting. I mean, you might have kept your job and you have, possibly your salary was cut by half. That means this communication needs to go to the people who you have borrowed from. And you tell them that, you know what, the truth is, before I was able to pay 400,000 shillings per month, but now I can only pay 200,000 because of these circumstances. There will be pushback from them that you need to pay right now. But you're trying to come out openly. Transparency, especially with the people you have borrowed from during this period, is important. Because of every 10 lenders, 9 will get into a position where they understand that this situation. You have that one who will say, this is impossible, I can't take it. But the other 9 might appreciate you coming out honestly. The most dangerous thing to do is to actually run away and say, I will keep away and keep a distance from these people who I borrowed from. That causes trouble, because the other person also goes into panic mode and they will get debt collectors, they will send debt collectors to you, which may actually just increase your distress. So you need to ensure that you're careful not to get lost, to know exactly what your debt portfolio is and exactly what is possible to pay, and then religiously pay that. It is certainly going to squeeze your consumption. But if you have said that of the 1 million I earn, I am going to dedicate 400,000 to pay debts, then be religious with that and make sure that the people you are paying know that there are a number of other people you have to pay, and this is the payment plan that you have.
Wow. And expenditure during the coronavirus period, do you think if people were to live a meek life, they'll be able to actually work with the meager resources they have right now?
I think most of us have been pushed into a position where we have no choice. I think many times when they say cut on your expenses, we say it in the environment when you have an abundance. But when you have lost a job, you have no choice. You will have to cut. But I think the key thing is to ask yourself, what lessons have I learned from this period? Because many of us didn't believe that we'll live off the budgets we have lived on for the last 5 months. It's actually a revelation that actually I can live off this budget. Now, as things get back to normal, and we are hopeful that they will, sometimes an increase in income may come. Now, the question to you is that as things get back to normal, do you still increase your expenses, or this time you increase your savings? Because we have all seen the pain of going into a situation like this without savings. So you need to ask yourself, now that things are starting to get normal again, possibly earning a bit more income, does that income increase my savings other than increasing my expenses? So I encourage everyone out there, going forward, we need to make sure that, one, we keep some savings, both for emergencies and for investments. We have seen the pain of not having those savings during this period. But we know that we have learned that lesson. We need to make sure that we do it going forward. And then, more importantly, we actually start walking a path where we are careful where we put our money, which expenses we commit to, especially these expenses which come up and say, you know what, I have a lovely suit for you. You'll find, I'll leave it at the reception. Don't worry, you'll pay me next month. Those are expenses which you need to avoid, because those are the expenses which eat up any surplus. So let us keep lean during this period. Even when incomes increase, keep lean so that that surplus can be used for saving and investment.
Well, when it comes to my story, Mr. Mukasa, I did see the coronavirus coming around December. But of course, you had stories coming in August that there was severe pneumonia. People were running out of villages in China. The people who are close to the border with Russia, they were running and leaving their villages. So in December, I had joined NTV in September. So October, November, you're trying to get back on your feet. So I could tell you by December, I didn't have any savings. That is the truth, Mukasa. But then I looked at this situation. There's a disease that is forcing people to move from one place to another, and it's spreading. And this was after Dr. Li Wenliang, one of the first whistleblowers, came out to say that, you know what, there is a problem. And I remember very well he said, even if you're in Africa, this disease is coming for you. So I was so scared. I didn't have a single coin. And I was like, if they call for a lockdown, a situation like that, it was like, wait for lockdowns, they are coming. Situations whereby you won't be able to leave the house. So I was like, I do not have savings. How am I going to navigate this situation? So I started saving slowly. Late December, January, February, then the president came with the lockdown in March. So there was some little money in the savings to be able to navigate life. But what about people who didn't know the coronavirus was coming? What about people who never saved the coin? What about people who thought the lockdown was going to be short-lived, but now it has lengthened? These people, Ronald Mukasa, let's address them.
Yeah, I think all of us were found in a very, I mean, many people didn't anticipate. We thought it was a Chinese problem. I think you're lucky that at least you started to do something small, even within the first 3 months. I think when it comes to the subject of putting aside money, specifically saving, you start where you are. Even now, even in the challenging times we are in, it is important for you to say that I will put aside a small amount of money. It's a percentage of however little you're earning. And what is important for us to notice is that during these times we have called out favors. We have asked family members. Some of us have withdrawn to the village. We've gone back to be able to reboot and restart. At least food might be cheap in the village. But the point is that irrespective of what you have done, the key thing you pick from this season is going forward, what am I going to change? And on that subject of saving, I think as a nation and as individuals, we need to ask ourselves, are we putting aside some money for a rainy day? Because that rainy day has come in the biggest way for many of our lifetimes. So we need to make sure you're putting aside some money. And the concept of saving is simple. It is you saying that a part of all that I earn is mine to keep. And there are many mechanisms you can use. You can say, if I'm working, for example, with an institution like NTV, there might be a staff circle. I'm going to put aside some money in there. You might say that on the village where I live, there is a club or an investment club or whatever it is where I can put aside some money. But the point is that it needs to be happening. It doesn't happen. The situation has caused us to appreciate why it always has to happen. But I think it's also an opportunity for us to change behavior. Sometimes behavior can only change after such a big shock, but the behavior needs to change. It will be very sad if we walk through this period and we don't change any behavior. So I think as a community, people have held hands of each other, neighbors have helped neighbors, family members have helped family members. There's been an effort to keep afloat. But I think at an individual level, you need to ask yourself, what am I going to change in my personal financial behavior so that I can be able to transfer.
As a financial literacy coach, Ronald Mukasa, have you had people approach you to say that since the coronavirus struck, they've lost their jobs, they've lost their income, but then they do not even have that extra skill that could help them maybe galvanize some kind of, or a living, that alternative means of survival? They do not have any skill. Have you gotten such people approach you for help?
Yeah, I think we've had conversations like that. But one of the things which comes out is that it's not the absence of that extra skill or the absence of
Like
that
you've been
extra
focusing on one
opportunity.
thing, you can't do another.
It is the focus, exactly, as you've rightly put it. It is the way you look at the way you earn money. Some of us have been earning a salary for 20 years, and we are used to having that paycheck coming in. Now, the process of earning money daily or earning money in periods which are not regular may be a bit shocking, but that is the change which we need to do. So all of us have something special that we can bring to the market. All of us have a problem we can be able to solve. However, we need to ask ourselves whether we have changed focus. The most dangerous thing is to remain focused. Some people are polishing up their CVs, but polishing up CVs in an environment where jobs are just not growing as fast. And instead of polishing the CV, you might have had to put that effort elsewhere.
And polish your skills.
Yeah, polish your skills. Or, you know, do something different. Some people might say that, you know what, I might have to move from Kampala, but an opportunity might be coming up in Gulu. And the question which you have to ask yourself is, are you going to be ready and willing to make that transition? Because it's uncomfortable. So that is where we are currently. Yeah, so I think when I look at anyone out there who is going through this transition, it's going to be an uncomfortable transition. It's going to make you do things which you haven't done before. But one thing which is clear is that the quicker you make that change, the better for you. So you might want to ask yourself, how can I look at the way I earn money?
I'm loving this conversation with you, Ronald Mukasa. And the main gist of this conversation is acceptance. Accept the situation. COVID-19 is here. I've lost my job. I do not have any other avenue through which I can make a living. Accept it. And then look for other avenues. Isn't that right?
Exactly, exactly. And I think you also have to go beyond just accepting and looking for other avenues, but take action. I think many times you can say I've accepted, but that step is a difficult step to make. It's an uncomfortable step to make. So some of us, it is going to be shameful to do some things. I mean, if you have lived comfortably in Kampala for a long time, withdrawing to your village in Kapchora may be a very uncomfortable process, and people will judge you. Or even your neighbors have seen you having a corporate organized job, but them seeing you starting out with a small hardware store, it's an uncomfortable process. All those are areas of discomfort. Possibly you have been a manager in an organization and you are the one who was laid off, but you have to go back to that organization and ask for help from someone who used to supervise, to ask for a small contract, to say, you know what, I want to do something for the organization. But that process of going out and begging for that contract, it's an uncomfortable conversation. So those are the things which we are all going to be going through. But as we walk through them, they're going to make us stronger and make us better for the future.
So accept that the situation is here and see how you can navigate it. Because me, I've tried to live a meek life. You know, I was like, you know what, if I'm going to navigate this situation, I'm going to live a what would Jesus do kind of life. What would Jesus do? Meekness. Just be humble with your expenses. Why are you buying juice of 12,000? You're going to be broke within 2 months. So let's ask, when is the right time to invest, to save and spend money?
Yeah, I think most of us feel like the right time to save money was before this crisis. But we are where we are now. I mean, this has happened, and I think the right time is now. Specifically on the subject of saving, you need to start right now, because it is a discipline you need to develop. And given the circumstances we are in, you might not be able to start in the big way you had hoped. I think most of us are having these conversations with ourselves that I wish I remember when I used to earn this amount of money. I could have put aside so much. But the point is that we are where we are. So you'll say that, you know what, now I'm earning only 500,000, but the 50,000 I will put away for this specific purpose. So that needs to happen. And then when you think about investment, you are going to have to look at the entire inventory of your of what you'd call I mean, you may not have a lot of capital in terms of liquidity, but you want to milk your network. You want to call up some of the friends you have never called up and ask them for a hand to start this. You want to get advice from people who you have never talked to. It may be one of your friends downtown who has been at the hustle for the last 7 years. You may want to go down there and say, you know what, the truth is, all I have is 200,000. What can I do in Kampala? They'll be quick to tell you that, by the way, there is a small spot here where you can be able to buy possibly a whole ndibota or something of clothes, and then you can be able to turn them in this way. Those are the ideas which we need during this period. And sometimes they're coming from unlikely places. But the question is that, are you going to go to those places and find those ideas? So the time we are in is also, I mean, even as a nation, we are seeing that we may need to rethink how we look. I mean, the conversation now which we're having is the fact that we need to produce these things, because if we don't produce them, not only our jobs are going, but in such circumstances, the world can forget about you. So all those conversations, you're saying which opportunities can be there. In my home, can I start a small cottage industry? What does it need to make yogurt? What process do we go? Then you remember you have a friend who did food science. He has worked at Makerere for a long time. Make that call. They could teach you something new, and you could start doing that. And even the nearby local supermarket, you say, no, let me hold my products here briefly so that I can be able to turn this. So that's the environment which we are in. I feel like the person we can learn from most during this period is the entrepreneur, because the entrepreneur has always been in this environment of uncertainty. I mean, this has been a tough time, but entrepreneurs know that you can make a deal and all the money is lost. So they kind of understand that. So I feel like most of us should look at entrepreneurs as people who have walked through this. A seasoned entrepreneur understands that such things happen, and they understand that you can walk through them. But the rest of us, we need to kind of borrow that entrepreneurial mindset to be able to walk through this. How can you say, make do with what you have so that we can be able to jump out of the situation we're in?
Would you support the idea of students who are now at home with no school to actually help their parents with work to make a living, or even the students themselves going out there to look for jobs? Would you support such an idea?
I think it's quite. And
do you think it might have an impact on school dropouts?
Yeah, I think it's a big debate. I mean, these are just, it's unprecedented, and it would be unfortunate for a child to say they chose work over their school. But families have been put in very challenging circumstances, and they might be in a position where they are unable to even have money to have food, and they look around and the young people who are there, they'll say, you know what, I think you have seen so many children on the streets who are selling. But I think the question is, I think as a family is, you still need to put your family to task to be able to be a bit more productive. I think to the extent which we can, there are many things which we can be able to do at home to be able to not just earn an extra living, but also the children to have an extra skill. I think the education is going to change. So it might be the children are going to learn to do something different, or it could be making a doormat, and that is education. It can bring an income, but that's a different kind of education. So I think it might be an opportunity for us to interrogate that as parents. What new skills can children be able to pick, not just for that extra income, but so that they are learning something during this period.
So instead of having them stay at home doing nothing, get them to acquire some new skills, but without stressing them too much and make it look like it's too much work that will make them abandon school.
Exactly. I think we should give every child an opportunity to finish school within the circumstances, and I think but we should also give the child an opportunity to learn different skills, and I think this is a period to experiment with that. We haven't had an opportunity where children are at home for this long. But definitely the question most parents will ask is, do I have the resources to be able to do that? And I think that's an important question. But within every household, there might be a new skill that can be picked by a child. And I think the parent needs to carefully say, what can I pick, even within my environment here? Sometimes you may find that even just cooking, the child doesn't know how to cook, and this is an opportunity to be able to learn that. But it's a skill which can also earn you an income in the future if you are a good cook. So those are the things which I think parents need to consider.
Okay, those are the parents, but what about the young people? Address them as we wrap up. Recommendations from Ronald.
Yeah, I think for the young people, we possibly every young person is going through what is the big season of our time.
The
I mean,
78%.
Yeah, I mean the 78%. Anyone below 30. The truth is, this is such a big moment in our. It seems to be a change in history. You know, when you read history, you hear about the Second World War and how it changed the world. I think this is a change. But I would want every young person to approach this period with a spirit and with an attitude of optimism, that actually possibly there are more opportunities coming out of this season. So you have to ask yourself, am I going to be able to seize those opportunities? So you are in a position to say, this season has happened, the circumstances are here, where you can give a hand to your parents, give a hand to your parents. But the thing which you should do is to know that the future is bright, but you are going to have to change as a young person of how you approach it. So I encourage you to go out there, learn something new, use the resources which you have in the household to be able to learn something new and make a contribution to your nation.
Ronald Mukasa Senkubuge is a financial literacy coach, and I've learned so much from him, and I hope you did get one or two things from his wise words. Many thanks, Ronald, for having made the time.
Thank you.
It's amazing. But then there is some bad news that is brewing in downtown Kampala. An arcade has been closed, hence prompting traders to get up in arms to protest. We do not have much information, but my reporter has that information, and there he is right there. Stephen Mbide, help me understand what is happening on the streets. Why are the people protesting? Something about an arcade. Very good morning, my brother.